Hello again everyone, this is Tom from Wildgrass, and I'm here to cover the March changes we've put into BEARZERKERS, covering a lot of stuff on Spiral that we've been doing a lot of work on, and we're going to start off first of all with some of the more broad changes before moving into the Spiral discussion. So, starting off with, we have the player's movement system. For a while now, in fact since the earliest parts of development, the movement has been entirely sort of digital, meaning you move at the full acceleration no matter how far you're pushing on the stick, and of course the same on keyboard where there is no analog input. But now we've changed over to an analog system, so keyboard will be largely the same, except controllers give you that extra precise movement where the slower you're pushing on the stick, the slower your character move, etc. We've also increased the acceleration and turning rate for the player, which will affect both keyboard and controller players. And this really just gives you much more control of your actions, much more precise movement, which is especially critical in the Spiral game mode for making exact dodges that you need to do. And it's working out quite well in Hunt as well, so we're probably going to be keeping this in. So you'll notice the slamming hammer things, they're over on the left, they're not actually in the map at the moment. That is of course a temporary change while we're sort of undergoing a major rework of how Spiral really operates. So in the past month we've actually shown off the game at two locations. We've shown it at the Reload Bar here in Canberra, and then another Canberra art festival called You Are Here, where we were in the gallery. And both state places we had a lot of chances for people to try out Gauntlet mode and the regular mode, but specifically we had a new final section of Spiral, which no one had ever seen before outside of the office. And we were really happy to get people in and see it and play it. And we found that no one could really get past the sixth lane of Spiral, let alone get to the end, which at that point was 20 sections long. And really having a look at that, we decided to do some major things to it. So just after we had finally flipped over the Spiral map to be left to right, instead of right to left as it had been from the beginning, as we'd kind of always intended but never had the time to do, we realized that there were further issues that we really had to take to task to get the game where it needed to be. And I'm just going to go through some of that stuff now. So basics of it is that a lot of systemic issues for the map were the very nature of it just being this big circular mountain. It being this sort of circular ever rising map meant that it was a lot harder to even make tweaks to the map. So if we ever wanted to make changes and stuff, every little change to any of the lanes, if we wanted to change their size and layout, would affect every other lane. And considering the way we were working with a model in that, it would mean we needed to re-export the entire level every time. We couldn't tweak overall disbalances without tweaking everything. So for example, when we tried to make some of the lanes longer and have less lanes, you'd run into an issue where the camera could break by trying to flip around over 180 degrees, and we just couldn't have that. So we're now moving towards a sort of more often straight than not layout for it, so it's going to be going from left to right still. It's really going to give us a lot more freedom to do a lot more fun stuff with it. So for example, we can have longer lanes without the camera breaking, or shorter, so we're going to have them ramping up from short to long, whereas before the lanes were about the same length, and the difficulty of them was primarily only determined by what enemies were in there. Now enemies play a role, but also the difficulty is upon how long and how wide the map is, and that really changes up what is going to be in there, and not only how wide it is, but what shape it is. So we can do more with the way that lanes sort of split off from each other. They can go off and have different sections. We can have things inside of the map which enemies are bouncing off, creating additional obstacles, and with the limited space we had available in the round map, it just wasn't able to do that. There's potential for us to do a randomized variant where more things come along in the end, and there was an issue with the old Spiral map design where the inner side of the lane, pointing towards the center of the mountain, was actually shorter and easier the further you got on in the map. So by making it all sort of a more straight orientation, then we get rid of all of those issues. And although it was cool to have the thematic design of you're reaching the top of this mountain, we found that most players, and I'm sure many of you out there who are in following development, may not have realized that you're going to the top of this peak, because the camera was often so focused on what you're actually doing inside the map that you couldn't really tell the larger picture of that sort of thing. There were things we could have done to solve that and make that sort of thing more cool, and of course finished art assets and things will always help with that sort of thing, but before we wanted to commit to that, I feel like there were just so many issues, and just not enough benefits to sticking with that old design. So no longer Spiral. It doesn't make much sense for it to be called a Spiral anymore, considering you're not going around in a circle. So we're thinking of it just being simply called Gauntlet for the moment. And that is not the only thing we've been working on here. So that's the map itself. Still obviously a long way to go there, but we've also been taking a keen hard look at teaching players how to play the game, giving players information while they're playing for even the people who do know what they're doing. There's been a few issues, and I'm really going to address that in the next few weeks, and mostly have here already, and I'd like to talk through some of that stuff now. So as you may have noticed in that little bit of a playthrough, we've actually changed most of the UI setup for Spiral. And some of these changes actually have come over to Hunt as well, in the form of the new meter, where we've gotten rid of the old notch system. So we went through a number of iterations trying to teach players so that they would know when and how long it would be until they could use their abilities. But using the notch system and the screen space we had available, it just wasn't working out very well. I went through about 6 or so different iterations in the Photoshop file. Through that, we sort of went, let's scrap it. One of our designers, Matthew, has been pushing for a charge-based cooldown system at the moment, which is what we've got here, and it's really working out much nicer. So we've got 2 different independent cooldown meters for either of your abilities, either your primary abilities which are on your character, in this case the Blink and Time Warp. They will actually just have a use time, so after you use it, it'll take a certain amount of time until you get a new charge. You can have a total of how many charges you have on your charge slots. So at the moment you start off with 1, you eventually get up to, I think, 4 is the final counter by the end of the map. And if you're using a ability over time, such as the time bubble, you'll see it actually cool down and not begin to clock back up again until you finish using it. This avoids a lot of issues we're having in trying to just do the hard design of getting into them, so you're not constantly just being able to use them. Although, as you see, we've kind of failed with that at the moment with the current numbers. It's a bit out of whack. I think in this version of the build, it wasn't properly taking in the numbers that we'd set to it, but even if it was, we still had not properly adjusted for the fact that you are using twice as many abilities because they're not interdependent on each other's energy pool. But it's a lot more fun. You can definitely tell what you're mentally doing a lot more now. We hope it's a lot more clear. There's also a lot more UI we're going to be putting in down the bottom, where it shows the player name and their abilities and stuff. That where the wheel comes up now, where you actually choose your abilities, will be over your character, and instead down the bottom it's going to be giving a lot more information over whatever ability you have hovered over while you're leveling up. So you're able to see the path of progression from that ability, what it's going to give you to level up, what it's going to give you to level up 2 things from there, so you can see why you'd want to bank points into that ability. And also on that note, we've reduced the total number of upgrades for each ability down to 5 from previously 20, I think was the number. And really the reason was just to make every level up feel important and feel satisfying to do, and just know that you're getting stronger with each one. Also to separate how many times you level up, so instead of leveling up at every checkpoint, it is at certain progression points in the map. I think now it's at every second checkpoint, which is around 20% of the map, you will level up. And the way that is increasing as you go along is the actual lane sizes are increasing, so sort of naturally gauges that stuff. We might tweak it a bit and maybe do a percentage of completion instead of a raw number, so we can do variable number of actual lanes and stuff for different difficulties of the Spiral. But for the moment, that's where we're at, and it's looking pretty good, although definitely need a lot of balancing on that one. And of course, just because we've been working on Spiral a lot doesn't mean we've left Hunt totally untouched. Alex has begun work on a number of additional modifiers beyond simply selecting which power-ups you'd like in use, and that stuff's not ready to show yet, but we do have a number of other things, such as replacing the life system, which previously just said 3 lives in actual just plain text down the bottom where the names are now, with a heart system, where you can see them disappear. We think this is better for a number of reasons. Primarily, the sort of visual language of hearts is much easier for people to understand. We often found people asking us or being confused as to whether 0 lives remaining meant you were dead and out, which it didn't at the time. It actually meant you had no more respawns left. But just simply having hearts I think is much less confusing either way, because if you wrote 0 lives remaining, some people would think the opposite, and as we had intended. But lives is much a more universal concept in video games through the heart system, so people will sort of get what's up with that. If they have 1 heart left, they can only die 1 more time and then they're out. We have a few new power-up replacements. So a while ago we took out Jump. We've now finally replaced it with a version of the Blink power-up used in Spiral. I'm thinking I'll be giving it a different effect to the Spiral one to communicate some differences with it, such as it always teleports the same sort of distance. We're also going to try and make it work so you can teleport between lanes if you are close enough to the wall, and you can teleport into a next movable area, so you can sort of switch over and quickly ambush another player. And also, like its previous use with the rocks, you can just teleport past rocks or get ahead of another player and take them out that way. It's a lot of fun so far. I think it might need a little bit of balancing, but none too much playing with it, and it seems pretty powerful at the moment. The power-up meteors now have a meteor effect to actually fall from the sky, as we always intended them to do. We scrapped a few effects trying to get what we wanted to go here, and though this may change, it's pretty much in the direction where we want it to be. It also has a sound effect now associated with it, so not only can you see it coming from above if you're not directly where the power-up is spawning, you can hear it coming to the map, so you always know when a power-up has arrived in the map, and sometimes you can see it approaching and get ready for that. There's also a little bit of a shadow effect down beneath where it's going to land, so you can sort of hone in on that, but it's maybe a bit hard to see. And of course we have this celebration effect for when the round has ended. This is going to be worked on a bit more. We're going to play some different music once the round is over, and we're thinking of moving the rematch menu and some more information over to the actual in-game screen after the round has ended, to let you restart scenes more quickly, not have to reload everything twice. And no, we like it where it's at now with the confetti and the light. Just really got to get some of the sound effects and music down. And of course we have the new respawn system visual, and of course we have respawning visualized differently with a single ring counting up to completion, rather than the bunch of separate rings and a number in the middle counting down, which wasn't really clear to anyone playing it without us explaining something. So hopefully this one will be a lot more clear and sort of self-explanatory. But we haven't tested it out with the public or people yet, so when the Steam build goes out, hopefully people will give us some feedback and we'll be able to know if we're heading in the right direction with all these changes. And that about sums it up for this month. We'll be trying to get another video to you by the end of April, perhaps early June. Early May, sorry. That was a bit of a slip up there. But yeah. Our next public showing will be at GammaCon in late May. This is a great event. We went to it last year. It's the second year for it here in Canberra. It's the biggest and best event of its type, I think, for the area, and it's really a lot of fun. Not only will we be there, but all the other game devs in the area, and lots of new games off to see, and we'll also be doing or participating in a panel about game development, so if you're interested in that at all, please come and take a look. There's the GammaCon website. It's gammacon.org.au. Check out all the information, all the things they'll have to show there. There's a bunch of different stuff. It looks like it'll be a bunch of fun. But yeah, with that, we'll see you in the next video.